This degree is the education that you need to put all the pieces together for an amazing life of ministry. You will graduate with a confidence for ministry that is backed up by your competence in the scriptures, theology, and ministry. Come learn with a trusted seminary that will help you become a faithful leader. Learn more at wbs.edu.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Live radio show here today on Monday, July the 15th, 2024. Not a lot to talk about, so we're going to play a lot of music today because just an uneventful news day. Of course, that was ultimate sarcasm because we are wall-to-wall with news.
Dramatic
Yes.
things happened over the weekend, as most of our listeners.
And this morning,
Yes.
too. So Tim Wildman here with Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Hey, good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Fred Jackson.
Good morning, sir.
And joining us in studio is Chuck Bond. Chuck is Assistant Director of Security Operations here at American Family Association. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, gentlemen.
We're going to invited Chuck in to talk about what took place on Saturday with the attempted assassination of former President Trump, because you have a lot of years of experience in police work. And what are those?
Well, in 35 years of experience, I've had the opportunity to serve in law enforcement, and some of my focus has been as a protective security specialist with contracting with the Department of State, providing mobile security in high-threat situations and security for our U.S. dignitaries.
So we want to talk to you about what happened Saturday from a police/law enforcement perspective.
Yes, sir.
But before we do that, Fred, the big news this morning is what?
Breaking news this morning out of Florida. A federal judge there has dismissed the Trump classified documents case. Many people saying this was the one that was perhaps left the president most vulnerable legally. But the judge in that case this morning, U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, saying that in her opinion, and it was a 93-page opinion, she said the special counsel in that case was appointed unconstitutionally. And I'll just read a little bit of it here.
Oh, read all 93 pages.
No, yeah.
Good parts of
The
that.
framers gave Congress a pivotal role in the appointment of principal and inferior officers. The role cannot be usurped by the executive branch or diffused elsewhere. In other words, she accepted the arguments from Trump's lawyers that the special counsel, Jack Smith in this case, was appointed by the administration, the executive, and Congress has to be involved with these appointments. They have to fund it. And she found problems with all of that. And so she has dismissed this case, the special documents case. This is the documents found at Mar-a-Lago, a Trump residence.
This is interesting because I had not. Abraham Hamilton III, we were in a meeting with him this morning. Abe, of course, is host of the Hamilton Corner in the afternoons here, 5 to 6 o'clock Central Time, and he's a constitutional lawyer. And so basically what he said was what Judge Cannon, the federal judge in this case, said was that she is not dealing, this has nothing to do with the, quote, merits of the case, okay? This is her saying, and after it was explained to me, and I agree with it, that the office of the special prosecutor is an extra constitutional office of the federal government. And if the federal government under the Justice Department is going to prosecute somebody, in this case Trump, then you can't farm it out. You have to have a U.S. I guess a U.S. attorney or some other official that's accountable inside the Justice Department. Am I explaining it right?
I think it has to. Now, I have not read the ruling from Judge Eileen Cannon. But I think the main point, as I have understood it this morning, and again, this is breaking news, that Congress has to be involved in this because Congress has the constitutional authority to appoint, right there in Article 1, to appoint judges and adjunct positions. And so now I do not know whether or not this means, Cannon's ruling, that the executive branch can no longer appoint special prosecutors. I don't know. So
Well, it's her opinion,
right,
and she's a federal judge. So, I mean, there may be another federal judge that disagrees with that somewhere.
it's kind of it's strange, not strange. I think it's good that after the Supreme Court ruling in the Chevron case, saying, listen, Congress has a constitutional job to do in overseeing what we, call these alphabet organizations. Congress has to oversee that. Congress has to pass laws.
Yes.
You can't in other words, you have to follow constitutional duties. It almost sounds like Judge Cannon is kind of saying the same thing.
Right.
Listen, the Constitution does not allow the executive branch to infringe on congressional authority under the Constitution.
Yes. Also, and then we'll move on to what happened Saturday. But the big news this morning is that the federal judge in the documents case in Florida has dismissed the case because she says the special prosecutor's office is unconstitutional. And if you guys remember back, we've had these special prosecutors. I don't know how many situations we've had those in, but we remember. But the one that was so egregious to me was when Robert Mueller, the former FBI director, was appointed by, who was he appointed by to investigate Trump? Anyway, who was he appointed by? Was it
Well,
was
new
it Jeff Sessions?
the new Attorney General under President Trump, Jeff
Recused
Sessions,
himself.
recused himself, and then a body, a group of lawyers
At the FBI
at the FBI, who we are told had
or the Justice Department.
Democrat Party leanings,
Yeah.
they appointed Mr. Mueller.
Right. So Jeff Sessions recused himself, and of course that's when he and Trump went sideways. But but I was pointing out the most egregious part of this. That's when Mueller, special prosecutor, seemingly had unlimited resources to go after Trump on the Russia, and then he hired a bunch of Clinton supporting lawyers to
17 lawyers
to do that. And I'm going like, this is not fair. And this is not. Do the American taxpayer not have a voice in this? Do they just, you know what I'm saying?
right.
So, and what's the old saying? If you give 17 prosecutors unlimited resources, they're going to find a crime
Right.
somewhere. But ironically, in the end, Mueller had to go before Congress, if you remember, and admit he had no crime. So 2 years, millions and millions of dollars, and you got nothing.
Yeah.
Basically, you got nothing to go after
Right.
him on. Talking about Trump on the Russia investigation. Anyway, the legal news there is that that case in Florida, the federal court case about the documents,
Dismissed.
has been dismissed. All right, let's talk about what happened on Saturday. Fred, give us most everybody knows what you're going to tell us, but go ahead and set the stage because I want to talk to Chuck about a lot of the questions that we all have.
Yeah, unless you've been away from radio and TV all weekend. Raleigh, Pennsylvania, Saturday afternoon. Trump is about 7 or 8 minutes into a speech. He has turned to the right. He's pointing to a graphic, I believe, of illegal immigrants. And all of a sudden, if you were watching, you heard pop, pop, pop. President Trump grabs his ear and immediately falls to the floor. And then Secret Service jump on top of him. So obviously, what we know from there that the president literally could have been killed if he had moved a couple of centimeters to his left. It grazed his ear. Secret Service moves in. They get him off the stage. We've now seen that picture. He puts his fist in the air and cries, fight. And they take him
American
off.
flag behind it.
American flag behind him. I think that image has been just burned in our minds now. Very minor injury for the president. Unfortunately, one of the spectators in the stands right behind him was killed in that, and 2 others were injured. We now know the shooter was on top, and this is a big part of the story. The shooter was on top of a building just 150 yards away. And that is being talked about a whole lot even this morning. How did this happen? Why was there somebody not watching that building, not on top of that building, that could have seen this guy? There is talk that local police were warned by one of the Trump fans in the audience, hey, there's somebody up on that roof. You better be careful about that. But this person who has now been killed, apparently was able to make it up there. So that's where we are this morning. Trump himself, there were speeches by Biden on the weekend that we have to tone things down. Trump flew to Milwaukee for the start of the convention, Republican convention, which opens today in Milwaukee. And apparently we had just found out he's going to make the announcement on his vice president sometime this afternoon.
Yeah.
So a whole pile going on.
Okay, Chuck. Again, what is your? Have you ever worked anything like what we're talking about here? A presidential visit to?
I've had the opportunity to serve on Vice President, at the time, Vice President Biden, and the commanding general of the U.S. Army was Lloyd Austin. As we know now, Mr. Austin is now the Secretary of Defense, and Biden is our current president. But when they came to Iraq in December of 2011 for the formal withdrawal of U.S. troops, I was already stationed over there with the Department of State doing dignitary protection, and they came, so I got to participate in that event and serve on his protective detail for the day that he was in town.
So you've done this kind of thing. By this kind of thing, I mean where a foreign dignitary or a president or somebody needs multi layers of protection.
Yes, sir. So when I was assigned overseas, our primary responsibility was to provide protection or security for our U.S. dignitaries who serve overseas, our U.S. ambassadors, our consulate generals,
Gotcha.
and all those that work in those facilities or foreign security officials.
All right. Tell us, go through if you can, just briefly, the steps that a Secret Service would take who are securing a place that a president's going to have a rally like Trump.
So the first thing you would see would be an advanced team that would go to the location. These are identified weeks in advance. They know where they're going. They send a team out. The team consists of multiple individuals who are going to look at every advantage point. They're going to do a threat assessment of the location. This one obviously is of a more concern because it was outside. So you're going to get a proper layout. You're going to get diagrams. You're going to get adjacent buildings. You're going to see where your threat may be, where elevation is involved, where they could reach out and touch your principal, the one that you're responsible for protecting. And when you bring in this threat assessment, when you bring it back in-house and you sit down and people are looking at it, then you're going to see and identify what additional resources that you may need. And I think Fred referenced that earlier, that it's not uncommon that in these type of events that you have to lean on local law enforcement. That may be your local police department, your sheriff's department, or your state police.
And I'm looking at a CNN article right now that says the U.S. Secret Service did not sweep the building from which the shooter in Saturday's attempted assassination was perched, but instead leaned on local law enforcement to conduct security at that location. That seems weird to me, strange.
Well, not necessarily, because again, with any event, you have a limited amount of resources. Now, whether some people say that's 150 yards out or 500 yards out or a mile out, So it seems to me from what we know now, is that they were focused on the bubble. And the bubble is that immediate area around your principal that you're responsible for protecting. That's where they put all their resources to. Now, when that advance was done, it should have identified this building that was less than 150 yards away. And I looked at a diagram that that I was able to get off the news, and you clearly see the building off to the right. And you would clearly identify it as a threat because it gives an elevated perch or a position where someone can reach out and touch the president or your principal.
That's important, because if you're in an elevated spot, you're not. Forgive me for being crude as I say this. You don't have to shoot through people to get to your target. You're up above the crowd, and you have a better line of sight.
It's not obstructed.
Okay.
So that would be the advantage point. You want the advantage point. You don't want them to have it.
Okay, so to review, what you've said is you have Secret Service on a visit like this where it's outdoors. You have Secret Service, and we can talk later about, do we need more Secret Service for our leading presidential candidates? Seems to me that yes, that's the answer. That is an answer. However, so you have those people, and then they to use a crude way of saying it, they farm out the security on the secondary level to like the sheriff's department or a local police department or maybe the state police.
That's
correct.
correct.
Know, right? I don't know. But this situation that happened on Saturday just is unbelievable. I think to the average person out there going, how in the world does a shooter get on a roof of a building within 150 yards with a clear shot of the president? Why? I know you can't answer these questions necessarily because you don't know all the details, but do you? Are you not asking the same thing?
Absolutely. Your first question is, how did this happen? And there was obviously a breakdown in communication. There was a breakdown in planning, because even if this advanced, you identified that that building was going to be covered by a support person or personnel or department. You could have. I would have expected that prior to the event that building would have been locked down, and any access to the roof would have been denied. So if there was a roof hatch, it would have been locked and secured prior to the visit so that no one could get up there just prior to.
Is that how he got up there? How did he get up there? Do you know?
I do not know.
You guys know?
I
is it a ladder?
I understand there was a ladder.
See, all that should have been removed.
To Chuck's point, what the Secret Service is saying over the weekend, they were responsible for the primary, what you call the bubble. What the police are saying this morning, the local police, local sheriff's office was responsible for the area beyond that, where this building was. That's what they're saying. But what they're saying this morning is Secret Service is saying wasn't our responsibility. That building was in an area that wasn't our responsibility. The local police are saying, at least one spokesman is saying, the Secret Service were in charge of all security. They didn't tell us that we should secure that building. And of course, another part of the story is BBC does the interview with one of these locals who came out to the rally. He said to the local police, I see some guy up on the roof of that building. You better get eyes on him and do something about that. And he said he was rebuffed. In other words, who cares? Now, the truth of all of this will come out in the investigation. But it sounds to me like point finger back at this moment.
The ultimate responsibility of Mr. Trump's security and safety falls on the Secret Service, period. Now, that doesn't mean that they had to physically be the one on that building, but they are responsible that building was safe and secure and covered. So that should have been a designated, it's anyone with any kind of experience or training, when you look at the overview, you would identify that immediately as a threat. So they should have made sure that someone was there. And then prior to his arrival, you have a command post. They had a command post there on the ground.
Yeah.
So they could have communicated with everybody to see that everybody was in position prior to his arrival. And they would have known that had it been a local officer that should have been there, was or was not on his post.
Yeah, because you get, again, Secret Service, which is an esteemed agency with a long history of excellence, I guess you could say. So I mean, these are the creme de la creme of their profession, and you're thinking, somebody even at the event itself, at the moment prior to the president even getting on stage, you're thinking with these guys, they're looking around going, wait a minute, hold on. Who's over there? Who's securing that building over there? I don't see anybody over there. You know what I'm saying? Seems like we would have eyeballed that. Now, I know, Secret Service, they're not superhuman. They're human like we are. They make mistakes. They're fallible, but they can't make mistakes. The Secret Service can't make mistakes. And in this case, it just looks bad.
Well, when it comes to this type of protection, no, you can't make a mistake. And, you have to be right every single time. And in this event, they weren't. There was mistakes made.
If you're Trump, he's not going to say this out loud, I don't think, but I'm thinking I can't trust these guys anymore.
Well, I think collectively there was some faults. There was breakdown somewhere along this whole process of planning and execution. I think you can look at it, though, and individually, I think you will see some individuals who stepped up and did their job and did it well and their responsibility and put themselves where they needed to be and in a place of being vulnerable to protect the former president. But someone is going to be held accountable.
I just got shot in the ear.
Yes.
I mean, I'm maybe y'all don't feel that way, but if I'm Trump, I'm thinking I'm not going to criticize the Secret Service out in the open. But behind closed doors, I'm going, my head was just about blown off. And who's responsible for protecting me? Secret Service.
How does this happen?
And they
How
did
did this happen?
And they didn't. And could it happen next week?
Hey, listen, if you're Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
right.
he has no Secret Service protection. I know he's not one of the two major candidates right now, but he's been asking for Secret Service protection for the last 6 months to a year, and he's been told no. There are some crazies out there.
Also, if I'm Trump, this is just me. There's no more outdoor rallies. Okay, it's too risky, and you can do them indoor. You can do them at arenas. Where they're more secure.
That would be safer, right? Indoor arenas.
It would be because they're going to sanitize the arena.
Yeah.
And then they're going to control who comes in,
Yeah.
and each individual that comes in will be screened.
Yeah, but these open air rallies, it's a wonder this kind of thing hadn't happened before. But to have a clear shot and
they may put up some type of ballistic barricade in between him and those attending.
They have the Pope Mobile, right? The Pope Mobile, which protects the Pope from gunshots. And like you said, I remember when President Trump had his inauguration, and remember he was at the Lincoln Memorial, and they were doing, I forgot what was it? They were a parade or whatever. He was observing. Anyway, it was about the inauguration. It was a celebration and everything like that. He was behind protected, what do you call it? Bulletproof glass. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Do y'all remember that? And so just maybe he'll use that in the future. I don't know if he does any more outdoor rallies, but I wouldn't if I were him. I would just do indoor rallies and plus I don't even know that rallies are necessary anymore. People going to vote for who they're going to vote for, pretty much. You know what I'm saying?
It drives excitement for your candidate. Well, I don't know how much excitement President Biden's driving, but on the other side, Trump gets huge crowds.
We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here
here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Who knows how much is at stake in the decisions we make every day? We decide to do something which seems so small, and it ends up shaping our whole life. I chose one day to become a Christian. I never realized when I made that choice how far-reaching the effects would be. It didn't seem to be such a earth-shaking choice at the time. I just looked at the options available as a way of life, and the Christian faith made more practical sense than any of the others. I'm old enough now to know that that decision was the wisest choice I ever made. Because of my Christian faith, I've been able to fit together the pieces of life's puzzle. I was in a big city recently, and while there, I watched the people who walked the streets. There were 3 young people who were cursing loud and clear, threatening to kill another person they knew if such and such a thing happened. I walked past the bars, and they were crowded. The music was loud, and the booze was flowing. Supposedly, the people who were there, they were there to have a good time. But you know something? That sure looked like a miserable way to have a good time. I spoke to a few people I met on the street. A few spoke back. Most ignored me. Some looked at me as if I was rather crazy for offering a smile. Every person is what he is because of the decisions he has made. Of course, each of us is influenced tremendously by others in the decisions we make, but in the final analysis, we do our own deciding. As I said before, we hardly ever realize the range of effects that our decisions will have on our life. We choose this or that. We go one way or another. And when we do, it brings us a certain kind of life. It is wise, as we travel along this road of life, for each of us to have a destination picked out where we wish to go. Then each immediate decision which we are called upon to make can be made in light of the destination for which we're traveling. Unless we do this, our immediate decisions can be totally unrelated, and we'll not have any idea where we'll end up until we are already there. Each of us will have to go on making decisions, for this is a part of life. This process, decision-making process, it's a part of life. And after we make our decisions, then our decisions make us. Like I said, no one ever knows how far-reaching the effects of a decision will be. I made a decision one day to follow the way. It has affected my life more than any other decision I have ever made. And the longer I live, the happier I am that I did.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love Him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim Wildman, Fred Jackson, Ed Battagliano, and in studio with us is Chuck Bond. Chuck is Assistant Director of Security Operations for us here at our ministry, but he served in Iraq and been
law enforcement.
Served in Iraq as a what do you call it?
Protective security specialist with the State Department,
and has experience in police work and SWAT teams and all kind. He understands securing an area for a something like a presidential visit. So I just wanted to give your credentials again real quick. I want to ask you something because you said like you were in charge. Were you in charge or you were a part of the team when Biden visited Iraq in 2011? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir, I was part of the team. Yes.
And who else came?
Lloyd Austin was the commanding general of the U.S. Army at the time, and he was responsible for the drawdown and withdrawal of U.S. troops in Iraq.
Right, okay. So I wanted to ask you about what happened Saturday with respect to President Trump being taken off the stage and then moved to the car and then on to the hospital. What is the role of those agents that swarm the president? I mean, what are they supposed to do? How does that work?
Well, they responded by providing a body bunker for the president to put a shield around him.
Literally supposed to take a bullet if they have to, right?
Absolutely. And then immediately get off the X. The X is the danger zone, the spot that where the threat occurred, and it was drilled into us during training, during scenarios that whenever an event occurred, whether it be while in a vehicle moving or while be moving on foot from venue to venue, or in this case, as Mr. Trump was up there speaking, then you grab the principal and you get off the X as soon as possible. I think.
But he's 6'2", 240.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what he's 240. He says he's 215, but I'm just not buying that one. But anyway,
he's a big guy.
He's a big guy.
Yes.
He's a big. Trump is six. He is 6'2", 6'3", and he's probably just looking at him. I'm gonna say he's 250, something like that. He's a big fella. And how do you handle something like that?
Well, what happened different in this situation is when Mr. Trump went all the way to the ground. And in a lot of instances, the person will not go all the way down. They'll be hunkered down or even bent over, which allows you to grab a hold of them and guide them and steer them in the direction you would want to go. And you're pushing them, if you will.
You got several of these agents trying to manhandle him to get him off the stage, I guess get him into a secure location, right?
Right, because your concern is of a secondary threat. Had in this event there been a secondary shooter.
And why they let him raise his head?
They shouldn't. They should have removed him quicker. They will conduct, and they have already began a AAR, which is an after action review that agencies do after every event. Not necessarily just when they go bad, but after every one, because they're never perfect. There's always room for improvement. And unfortunately on this one, there were several failures.
I put some of that responsibility, too, on President Trump. And I know it's the heat of the moment, so to speak, but when Secret Service is trying to get you off the stage and they're manhandling you, you don't raise your head above their shoulder level. And
I'm guessing there's kind of a shock at the moment. To me, Secret Service, those are the ones who are trained. They're trained for these kinds of situations. President Trump, was still trying to communicate with the crowd. It seems to me that trained Secret Service should not have allowed him to do what he wanted to do. If he had said, no, I'm finishing my speech, no, sir, Mr. President, you cannot. So I'm guessing President Trump was kind of in shock, maybe not physically, but mentally and emotionally. He wanted to get back and communicate with the audience. That's what I'm.
Well, he did.
Yeah, and that picture is going to be iconic for our lifetimes and beyond.
Fight, fight, fight.
Yeah, it was hand raised, blood coming down off the side of his face, with the American flag in the background.
They'll be looking at that in 100 years from now in pictures of our country's history.
Right.
But I was just, I was surprised, given that you hear that they're supposed to take this guy or whoever the president is, and that anyway. But you know what? Like you're saying, you can. It's different doing trial runs, and then something like this actually happened, and you're talking about a big man right there. There's been some discussion about one of these Secret Service agents that looked to me like a 5'3" woman.
I wanted to ask that because
you're going to be the sexist here?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to couch this in a way that hopefully doesn't sound sexist.
Okay.
But, Kim Cheadle, who is the director of the United States Secret Service, she has said in the aftermath, and then
we have audio.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Fred.
She has talked about her priority as head of the Secret Service, and you have a listen to what she had to say. Cut number 4.
We need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
All right. So the question I wanted to ask was not that women should not be able to work in the Secret Service. They love their country just as much as men do. They want to participate. But physically, unless you have a woman who's as tall as these tall agents, you want to protect form that bubble, and a woman, a shorter woman's not going to be able to give protection to the head of somebody the size of Trump. There is some sexism involved in that, but I'm just talking about biological facts here.
I did get an opportunity to serve with some females when I was overseas. They were a minority. There were only a few of them. They were very capable. They were experienced. They had to take the same test that I did when it came to the PT test and the weapons qualifications course. But there are many different roles in the protective service detail. So just because one may not be, not everybody was a driver. Not everybody was a sniper. So you got different skill sets. So maybe that's one thing they should look at is evaluate.
I don't think a 6'9" guy can fit in a fighter jet to be a pilot.
Yeah. Well, sure. I understand.
My point is, not everybody's physically capable of doing a job that is assigned to them, despite the fact that they may be excellent otherwise. So in a situation like this, seems to me, and I think that those responsible for bodyguarding the president should be. I'm talking about the ones who form not office people or whatever, even officers on the ground who have some other responsibilities could be female. But if you have somebody, those 5 or 6 who are getting him off the stage, in this case, they need to be big, husky dudes. And look like a few of them were, you know what I'm saying, who can have the strength to
manhandle a shocked human being, someone who's in shock.
Yes, and should be tall enough to also protect somebody who's. So when I saw the woman there, I'm thinking she's like to me she's 5'3", 5'4". She's not. She may be a wonderful agent, but she's not physically tall enough to be a part of protecting the president. That's just what I thought when I was watching. That's how I wanted to watch.
And that could be for a male or a female. If they're not physically able to do the job, then there may be another role for them. That's right.
Chuck's trying to stay out of trouble here. It sounds like to me.
Yeah.
No, listen. Anyone who wants to serve and protect the president or others, my hat's off to them. Male or female doesn't matter. So,
but I got a problem with her diversity hiring policy there, because she's doing what do you call it, DEI?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's doing. We got to have a certain percentage of these workers be so and so category, female. No, for the Secret Service, you take the best of the best.
Right. Like Chuck said, you got to pass all the tests.
Doesn't matter.
When I went
not set a quota.
Right.
When I went through training, I lost 4 roommates during that time because of a failure in that training sequence. You can go to the range and have a bad day. You may be an excellent shot, but you have one bad day at the range, you're on a plane ticket back
because
home.
you can't afford to have a bad day when you're in the Secret Service.
So I lost one due to he had a personality conflict with instructors. Again, you're in a tight group working together. You got to be able to get along with each other, articulate if you have any concerns, but then be on board and complete the mission.
Yeah.
You have any other questions, Fred?
No. I think, it's going to be investigated. President Biden said they're going to have an independent investigation as to what happened there. I think what is recognized, something went very wrong. Somebody had to be responsible for not just the security of the primary area, but certainly that building within 150 yards of the president. Something went wrong. We'll have to find out if they actually do an honest investigation.
What would keep me up if I was responsible for the oversight of what occurred this weekend was that a 20-year-old with no experience, from what we know now, not prior military, was able to come within 150 yards of the president or former president.
Get a clear shot.
And was able to reach out and literally touch him.
Yes.
with
Now-
an AR-15. Didn't he have? He had a.
It's my understanding it was a rifle and it was iron sights. I don't know any more than that, but that's what I've heard. But my point is, if this would have been a collective group of individuals with some kind of training and some kind of planning,
It'd have been a massacre.
the discussion today would have been completely different.
That's a good point. If you had professionals, and we've this goes back to the border issue, that we have really no idea who has come across that border. FBI Director Christopher Wray has said all kinds of red flags, that there are real dangers in terms of who's in our country. But to your point, well-trained, experienced,
maybe not professionals,
people.
but experienced.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. That's Chuck Bond joining us to talk about what happened on Saturday from a police/law enforcement perspective. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim with Ed and Fred. Two big stories right now, other than obviously the aftermath of the attempted assassination on Saturday of President Trump that we were discussing. One is the federal court case in Florida having to do with the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago has been thrown out, has been dismissed by Judge Cannon, the federal judge there, a Trump appointee.
And by the way, Jonathan Turley is a law professor at George Washington Law School and is a frequent contributor into the media, especially Fox. He said that case, the documents case, the Mar-a-Lago case is how we typically refer to it, probably was the most dangerous criminally that the president was facing. And now that's been tossed out.
Yeah, it's tossed out. So that's a big story there. And then secondly, sometime today, President Trump will name his vice presidential choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a pretty good secret. His team's been able to.
Yeah, a lot of names keep being mentioned.
Who's your? Okay, who would be your choice? I only asked that question because I won't answer it myself.
Yeah, well, I think Marco Rubio has been on the short list, not necessarily President Trump's short list, but the short list everybody's talking about. He brings a lot to the table.
Yeah.
From that he can bring. Now, some question about Trump's primary residence is in Florida, and you got a Florida senator. So some people talk about that. Governor Burgum also talked about a lot, and also Vivek Ramaswamy has also been talked about. But you know what? Donald Trump being Donald Trump, it could be somebody that's not on anybody's radar.
Ed, you want to answer the question?
Yes, I will. I would be okay with Marco Rubio. I think he's stronger on social issues than some of the candidates who have been named. He has had some immigration questions on some of his proposals.
He's not legal?
No. Or wasn't that with the Gang of Eight?
Yeah.
So I would be okay with Marco Rubio. I would like Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott, for me, checks all the boxes. I don't particularly care for J.D. Vance. I don't think he's experienced enough. His views have not been tested. I don't know what his views are on some of the social conservative
He was a serious never-Trumper.
And he was, a very serious
J.D. Vance I'm talking about. Now, he converted over, but I'm just saying he was.
I don't think he's got enough experience.
He's a first-time senator from Ohio.
Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't think he has enough.
Name.
I do like saying his name. I don't think has enough experience to be a vice presidential candidate. I wouldn't mind seeing him in some sort of office for a Trump administration. Tulsi Gabbard has a lot of common sense, but I think some of her social issues.
She was a Democrat not too long ago.
She was a Democrat. So anyway, I'm like everybody else. I'm going to wait and see. I think I think you've said this, but you can speak for yourself. I think we really need a good, solid Christian as the number 2.
Please.
So to keep the Republican Party and the Trump administration, if he were to win, tethered to conservative ideals and Judeo-Christian values. And when President Trump leaves office, this would be his second term. He would not be able to run again, not for president. You would have a strong candidate going forward.
Yeah.
Can you guys name one that fits that criteria?
I like Tim Scott.
Tim Scott.
And then Marco Rubio probably second.
Okay.
From the group that's been bannered about.
Okay.
Okay. If you're asking me to pick among the 4 that have been rumored to be the final 4,
The short list, yeah.
that would include Doug Burgum.
Yep.
The the governor of, is he the sitting governor or is he the former governor?
No, sitting.
Okay, sitting
North
governor.
Dakota, yeah.
Sitting governor, and he's basically a businessman.
Yes.
He's
Successful.
He's got a lot of money.
Mhm.
He's a very successful businessman. He's the governor of North Dakota. Then you've got J.D. Vance, the freshman senator from Ohio. Then you got Tim Scott. Would you guys say he's been in the Final 4?
I'm not sure if
Maybe
his name has been kicked around. I don't know if he's
Not
made
lately,
the Final
though.
Four, but
Not-
not lately.
Not
Not
lately.
lately.
He's the senator from South Carolina.
Mhm.
Marco Rubio, the veteran senator from the state of Florida. Am I missing one more that's been like?
Yes, Governor of Virginia.
Oh, Glenn Youngkin. Okay, Glenn Youngkin.
And he's kind of been the opposite of Tim Scott. Tim Scott is like settled into the background, but
Okay.
Glenn Youngkin has kind of shot up into
His star has been rising.
All right, so among that group of people, and they're all fine people, and all intelligent people and articulate. That the ones I've just described that I've been able to hear. However, for me personally, in agreement with you, Ed, it would be wonderful if we could see somebody in the vice that Trump would pick who would be from a conservative Christian worldview perspective. That just would that would give me a better comfort level going forward, because that person will have the ear, and that's a terrible thing to say. I didn't mean to say that of President Trump. Forgive me, that was tacky, but I didn't mean it.
It wasn't.
No,
I did not intend to.
After being shot.
I didn't. No, I did not intend to use a pun there. Excuse me.
There's one more name, and I know she's not.
But let me have my pick, Fred, please.
Okay.
What's
your pick?
Ed knows I like to share my heart.
Yes.
Fred.
Share.
Ed wants me to share my heart.
I want you to share your heart.
Don't you love when
the world wants you?
I make fun of that because Christians always say I want to share my heart. Share my heart means I want to tell you what I think about it, and you can't question me
because you're sharing your heart.
Because it's coming from my heart. So if you got anything negative to say about what I said, it comes from my heart, and you're hurting my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So all those names being bandied around, of course, it's not going to make any difference because Trump's the one who picks the guy, and today is his day. He said he's going to announce, but I think. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, would make me the happiest of all those people because he is a seasoned senator with a lot of experience. He's still young enough to carry on after President Trump finishes his, so many wins. And he's also well respected in conservative circles, and he's a Christian.
Right.
So and he's smart, and yes, he has some negative things in his past, but they all do.
Right.
I'm not talking about moral things. I'm talking about places where we would say, well, we disagree with him on the Gang of Eight on the immigration thing back a few years ago. I think was a mistake on his part, but overall, his career is very commendable from a conservative point of view. I'm talking about Marco Rubio. So that would make me the happiest. Now, if you're going to think outside the box, so to speak, out of those four names, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who is speaking at the Republican National Convention, I don't think that's going to happen because of it's just not going to happen for multiple reasons, probably. But that would rock the world for people because he was kind of the second choice.
Right.
If you surveyed Trump supporters in the Republican primary, they would say, "Oh, I support Donald Trump first." But if you had to ask me who I would vote for second, it would be Governor DeSantis of Florida. But I think that's fantasy world stuff because I don't think that's going to happen. Governor of Florida has endorsed President Trump after he dropped out of the race, and he's speaking at the Republican convention, and I'm sure he will reinforce that endorsement. Now, the other option, another name that's been bandied around is perhaps Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, who is, but I haven't heard her. That would be another outside the box type choice, Fred.
Yeah, and I don't see that. The chemistry between those two during the primary was just so toxic.
Bird brain. Yeah, it was so, and she was very critical.
She
of
wasn't
him.
even invited until recently, right?
Just this
to the
week.
Convention.
Well, she released her delegates on Friday, but then over the weekend we learned she's going to have a speaking spot tomorrow night at the convention.
All right, you were going to say,
Yes.
who's your dark horse candidate?
Well,
VP.
I don't think she's interested, but I really like her, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's a chip off the old block.
Yeah.
I like her dad. I like the way he handles himself.
Right.
And she is much the same. She's so far been a
Yeah,
great.
but she's a freshman governor.
Yeah, she's
I
been
mean,
a great governor, though.
Oh, I agree.
But-
But 2 years she's.
But she's got so much experience with Donald Trump, too. She was his White House spokesperson
Right.
Yeah.
for so long. She knows the guy.
You know, Glenn Youngkin is just a first-term governor in Virginia.
That's true. But
Yeah.
he can't run a second time either.
Right.
You know,
I'm just saying in terms.
Yeah,
of
no, you're
political
right.
experience.
You're right about that. And
Yeah.
Glenn Youngkin, he was the other one. I would be, from what I know of him, I would be happy with him.
Oh, yeah.
He won the governorship in a purple to blue state.
Yeah.
And look what he's done there.
Yeah.
My goodness. I mean,
He's
got
pretty fearless.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Trump would pick him though. You know why? He's 3 inches taller.
Is he 3 inches taller
That
than
dude,
Donald Trump?
that dude can dunk on Trump.
yeah.
He's six.
Trump's a tall guy.
Trump's probably 6'2", 6'3". This
Yeah.
Glenn Youngkin looked to me like he was like 6'6" because there was a picture of them side by side.
Yeah.
So
But any of the names we've mentioned,
yeah,
I would love to see in a debate with Kamala Harris because I think they would wipe the floor.
I think that's a real possibility. Any of those folks are articulate enough. Now, I will say this: I wouldn't underestimate Kamala Harris I know you guys.
hold on. Let us get through laughing. Hold on a
I wouldn't
second.
underestimate her
Yes.
in a debate setting.
Yeah.
She really is. She's not dumb. She's been accused of being that.
Right.
Her public speaking is atrocious in terms.
You think
of,
she would share her heart?
I think she would share her heart. I think she has the capability of throwing a lot of statistics and doing enough debate prep. You wouldn't have a walkover. That's. I know people judge her on her word salads, but
Yeah, Vice President Harris, what did you do to secure the border?
oh no, I didn't say she'd have good answers in terms of content, but she would not be a pushover. Let me put it this way. I've disappointed you again, haven't I, Tim?
I wish you wouldn't have shared your heart about Kamala. I can't get that out of my mind now. Word salad, Kamala Harris. All right, we'll see. We're going to get some Thousand Island, and then we'll be back in 5 minutes.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
As a federal or state employee, you have the opportunity to support the American Family Association through the combined federal campaign. By designating a monthly payroll deduction using 12037, you help AFA continue to fight for your family. So when you complete your CFC form, remember, AFA's number is 12037. And thank you for your help.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Federal Judge Eileen Cannon dismissing the case against former President Donald Trump involving his retention of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. Kentucky Congressman James Comer spoke about the decision.
All these cases that I considered legal warfare against Donald Trump are falling to the side, and the American people can focus now on electing the next leader of the free world.
Former President Donald Trump surviving an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania Saturday. One person died during the attack, and 2 more were injured. Alexis McAdams was in attendance covering the event. She's reporting from Milwaukee.
We heard those pops that ended up being gunfire, the excitement quickly turning into panic as people tried to take cover, and that gunman up on a nearby roof was taken out by Secret Service. It's still hard to believe this all played out. For the first time since the attempted assassination there in Pennsylvania, we're hearing this morning from the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, calling this a senseless act of violence in a statement, saying in part, in addition to the additional security enhancements we provided former President Trump's detail in June, we have also implemented changes to his security detail since Saturday to ensure his continued protection for the convention and the remainder of the campaign.
Florida Congressman Byron Donalds weighs in on the need to figure out what the Secret Service did wrong.
It's not going to be good enough just to accept responsibility and we'll do better. As far as I'm concerned, we need the names of which agents were doing the advance work, who spotted what are the timelines to really get to what happened here so you can truly make sure something like this doesn't occur again.
Texas Congressman and Army combat veteran Wesley Hunt says President Trump displayed tremendous courage during the incident.
As an Apache pilot flying in combat, I've been shot at before. The courage under fire that we saw from President Trump is absolutely unprecedented. He gets shot, and the first thing he wants to do is get his shoes back on, tell the world to continue to fight for this cause, and walk off that stage with dignity. So that's the same guy that I am sure is going to be back at a rally in no time.
The Republican National Convention kicking off today in Milwaukee. Days after that attempted assassination, RNC Chair Michael Whatley is calling for political unity.
You can't have an event like Saturday, a shooting like we had, without causing everybody to stop and take stock of where we are as a country. And it really does come down to unity. You know, Donald Trump has unified the Republican Party stronger than anybody we've seen in decades.
The Republican Party is becoming notably less conservative and less Christian in its new stance, the first policy change the GOP's made since 2016. Bronson Woodruff has more.
We've recently reported on AFN about the Republican National Committee's newly adopted party platform. Various analysts AFN has talked with shared their observations on the changes. It now mentions God only twice, as opposed to 15 times in the previous RNC platform. It's more lenient toward abortions, making this the first time since 1984 the platform has not called for a national ban on abortion. It also mentions the sanctity of marriage, but it does not define what marriage is. Linda Harvey is president of Mission America.
Well, I recently wrote an article about the need to continue to stand strong against all of the behaviors in the LGBTQ, quote-unquote, movement, including homosexuality. And it really comes up now when you see what the RNC supposedly may be going down the path of not saying anything about standing against same-sex so-called marriage.
She said we need to continue to stand against that.
Homosexuality is very destructive in people's lives, and we definitely should not be holding it up as an acceptable option to our children.
But she said she's afraid that there's a divide going on, and the RNC platform exemplifies this, that people, now on the conservative side, are willing to accommodate same-sex attractions and behavior, but still stand strong against teaching gender compromise to our children. Harvey concluded by saying we need to take the biblical position, to stand strong against all of it. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
U.S. stocks are rising toward records today as Wall Street's momentum keeps driving it upward. More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Every day, AFA offers biblical insight on issues that others aren't willing to touch in the hopes that you'll become a world changer. That's why we're offering an in-depth worldview training course called Activate. 13 different professors teaching 18 sessions, all available online, including a printed workbook to help you apply what you've learned and 1-year access to AFA streaming content to give you even more resources. Find out more about Activate and sign up today at activate.afa.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Vitagliano, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us in studio. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Tim. And I got to tell you, I have been sitting in your seat the last couple of days when you've been gone.
Yeah.
The power's kind of gone to my head.
Has it now?
Yeah, so I need to, just kind of relax a little bit and dial it back, dial the rhetoric back because,
Yeah.
The rhetoric has been heated over there.
Yeah, well, so you sat in this chair?
Yeah, I did. I gave everybody raises the other day.
That's why everybody was hugging you this morning.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a very popular thing.
Okay, so Ed, you want to tell folks how they can use their internet as you described
Yes,
it?
if you would like to watch the live video stream of this show and other shows here on American Family Radio, there's several options for you. You can go to Facebook for this particular show. You search for Today's Issues. You can go to YouTube and search for Today's Issues Live. We're back on YouTube after a short timeout. We apparently violated community standards, but have no idea what we did. But we're back on there. And now, if you want to go to our own streaming service, that is stream.afa.net, stream.afa.net, or you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and search for American Family Radio and watch any of the shows that have a live video stream there on X.
All right, Steve, first story.
Well, I just thought we should probably talk a little bit about the media coverage that's been going on and the different narratives that we've been getting. We've been seeing this morning, they took Morning Joe off the air at MSNBC because they were afraid that they were going to say something wrong. So,
hey, I don't watch it, but I know who they are. But that is that's one of the more popular shows.
Yeah.
On
it's it's their flagship show.
I would have thought Rachel Maddow was.
Well, okay, you
one of those two. Yeah. Anyway, so you got Joe Scarborough and I can't pronounce
Mika Brzezinski.
Yeah, so they have a daily talk show.
Whose dad was Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Her dad was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So MSNBC decided not to let their show go on the air?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's been a very strident. Joe and Mika have been with the exception of Rachel Maddow and I guess on another network, Joy Reid, they've been pretty strident against Donald Trump. They've been leading the fascist Hitler comparisons.
Okay, so MSNBC was worried they were going to. I've never heard of a news show that is daily being pulled because the network itself is worried that their host will go off.
That was the network said it was, or the statements that have been made said that the network and the hosts were concerned that some of their guests on the show would say something just completely irresponsible, which to me does not let the hosts or the network off the hook, because they apparently have guests on there often enough who say crazy things.
But it would be like Sean Hannity on Fox Fox announcing Sean Hannity won't be on today or the next day because Sean's worried and we're worried that some of his guests are going to say something unhinged.
Right. So they're not.
Is that not kind of bizarre?
Yes.
For what it's worth, I don't buy that either, Ed. They don't have to have guests.
Well, they have an hour show or something.
There's enough material out there to talk for an hour with videos of Trump being shot and everything without. So, and
all I can
say
do
that
is
it was
go,
a mutual decision, I doubt that. It just feels to me like MSNBC was, I bet that Joe and
You know what that's called, Steve, right there, what you just did?
What is it?
Sharing your heart.
I'm sharing my heart. I know. You can't disagree with me, right?
No, what's your next story, Steve?
Well, they're all.
I know, right. sharing your heart.
It's the same story over and over again. I just want to have some examples of what's going on here. So here's what struck me over the weekend. First of all, we had President Biden, who came on the air twice, Sunday morning, I guess, and Sunday afternoon. And the first time, at both times, he called for unity, which I found a little odd. Maybe not surprising, but a little hypocritical, because if anybody has not been the uniter in chief, it has been our president, Joe Biden. I want you to listen to, this is a little bit of what he had to say Sunday morning, and then a little bit of what he's had to say in the past about our president and his supporters. Cut 9.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. History tells us that blind loyalty to a single leader and a willingness to engage in political violence is fatal to democracy. For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it.
So those are past examples of where President Biden has made statements, and he's not alone, but has made statements from the left basically saying that President Trump and his followers who follow blindly, he said, one man, we know what he's implying, that he's the new Hitler, are a threat to our democracy. And that is not a unifying speech. That is a divisive speech.
And
but he did that prior to calling for unity.
Right.
This call for unity is a joke. Whoever calls for it, in the sense of political unity, we're not going to have political unity in this country. Now, if you want to say call for, because President Trump said he's calling for unity, well, you think all of a sudden Democrats are going to sign up for that? No. Now, if you want to call for unity, Biden and Trump, you want to call for unity in terms of condemning violence as a political action, then yes, there can be unity in that call.
Right.
But there's not going to be unity in our politics in America because we're just
clear. Two different worldviews.
Exactly.
Are picturing two different Americas in the future.
Right. So, do you agree with that?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Now, I think you can maybe tone down some of the language on the left, for example. You just stop calling Trump Hitler, okay, and saying he's a threat to democracy, because that, if you're going to portray your political opponent as the next Hitler, who was a dictator, okay, then you are implying that there's one way to stop him. So that kind of stuff, sure, that kind of language, you can tone that down. I'd be happy with that.
There's a narrow, a fine line that needs to be drawn in that we need to, I've heard a lot of people saying there's only one person to blame for the shooting, and that's the shooter who was killed immediately afterwards. We didn't blame Bernie Sanders for Gabby Giffords shooting. It was a Sanders. It was a.
You talking about the congressional shooting at the baseball?
No, this was different.
Well,
That was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
So, yeah, right. And, okay, forget Gabby Giffords, but we didn't blame Sanders for that shooting.
Right.
The only person to blame is the shooter. But as has been pointed out by a whole lot of people that I've been hearing, you can't have this rhetoric like you guys are talking about. And I won't right now, but I could play an example. I have 52 seconds of the media calling Trump Hitler. And you're right. Who wouldn't go back and take out Hitler if they had a chance?
Right.
I do want to play this for you. This is the way that the narrative in the media is changing right now. So after the shooting, immediately after, everybody was horrified. The president's been shot. He was, the reaction was genuine. Everybody, all the networks were covering it fairly straight. But it didn't take long for at least ABC to come around and decide to find their footing again back where they were. I want you to listen. This is George Stephanopoulos and Martha Raddatz at ABC. And it certainly sounds to me like they are blaming Donald Trump for his own assassination attempt. Cut 11.
President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And of course, in March, he said, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That will be the least of it. He said he was partly joking and that was taken out of context.
It was taken out of context.
Very much so. And I've been hearing that a lot. They're stringing mendicities.
Mendacity's lies?
Lies.
Yeah.
They've been stringing them together.
You just wanted to say mendacity.
I did. I wanted to sound brilliant. But when you mispronounce the word, trying to sound
You're a regular Ramaswamy.
When you mispronounce the word, it kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Because he said economic bloodbath.
He said an economic bloodbath.
He wasn't talking about blood in the streets.
No. And when he's talking about if I am convicted, you're going to see riots. He's not calling for riots.
Right.
He's saying it's likely to happen. It didn't, by the way.
And listen, there has been a lot of really tough language on both sides. We've used that kind of language on this show, talking about the radical left and the cultural Marxists. I have no problem with trying to describe what you think is the political alignment of certain major players on the political spectrum. I have no problem with that. I am opposed to calling for violence, and I am certainly against the left implying that Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler and something needs to be done about it. Antifa famously in the summer of 2020 said we have no problem punching fascists in the face.
Right.
Okay. Well, who do you consider to be a fascist? Whoever we disagree with.
Well,
okay. So to me, that kind of language is wrong.
Yeah. Just one more cut, and then we can move on to other news. Although other news is scarce, this is kind of sucking all the oxygen out of the room. But the Staten Island, there's a press conference in Staten Island, New York, was one of the 5 boroughs, and they were talking. Obviously, the Trump assassination attempt was on the list of questions, and one of the reporters said, "Before you guys, maybe you guys shouldn't be, talking about blaming rhetoric before you know where this guy was, because maybe this guy was a Republican." And then, and I want you to hear the response of the Staten Island GOP. This is cut 12.
Oh, by the way, a registered Republican. Yeah. You guys know about that?
Yeah. So you want to talk about the fact the guy may be a Republican, or at least registered the Republican Party, which anybody in this country is free to do. You're talking about rhetoric. Are you saying that we should wait until we know what's going on? Everybody on the planet knows that you have MSNBC, the New York Times, Rachel Maddow, The View. You have Maxine Waters. Oh, let's get in their faces. You have this going on every day. And you dare to say to us, shouldn't we wait? Regardless of this young man's motivation, what he did was wrong. He tried to assassinate a president of the United States. And you stand there and say, well, maybe I should wait. maybe it's okay? Are you saying the fact that he was registered to the Republican Party absolves all of the media of all of the coverage they've done for the last 10 years? Absolutely not. That is a pathetic question, and I think you guys should be ashamed when you have social media, you have control of the media, you talk about the laptop, you talk about Russian collusion, all of that we have to forget, because maybe this guy was registered or is registered to the Republican Party. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Who was that?
That was the head of the GOP party in Staten Island, the Staten Island GOP.
I could tell he was a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'm guessing Staten Island, like most of the 5 boroughs in New York City, is pretty liberal.
Actually,
so if you're the head of Staten Island GOP, you're used to it being in verbal spats.
I'm not an expert on New York politics, so I could probably come across that way. But what?
No, nothing. I just thought of something funny.
But I will add this. I have read where of the 5 boroughs in New York, Staten Island is the most Republican.
Could be.
I did not know that.
Five
It's a low bar.
Right?
No.
5 boroughs, true?
Yeah,
5
I
boroughs,
think it's 5 boroughs.
Can you name the 5 boroughs, Ed? Go.
Let's see, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Manhattan, and I forget the 5th.
Bronx.
Very good.
And yeah. So, but Staten Island.
That'd be a good trivia question.
Yeah, it
Friday.
has the most Republican voters.
I'm going to use that question on
Yeah,
Friday.
you do that.
Yeah,
Use that.
So, folks, if you're listening,
All right.
pay attention.
You know.
Study for the test. A little cheat sheet there.
Right.
All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. If you want to send us an email, the address is comments@afr.net, comments@afr.net. Tim, Ed, and Steve. Go, Steve.
So a couple of weeks ago, Jamal Bowman became the first squad member to be removed from office. He lost a primary to another Democrat. Jamal Bowman was from, I believe he was
New York.
New York.
I think the Bronx or Brooklyn.
the
She's
five-
whatever, right near AOC's area. Where is she? She in the Bronx or the Brooklyn or Brooklyn?
Well, she is in Brooklyn. I think she's in Brooklyn. So he's probably the Bronx. But
Yeah.
it doesn't exactly go.
New
by
York,
borough,
New
but
York,
yeah.
New York.
So anyway, and we might have a second because right now, as they sit with a primary coming up on, where is it? In a couple of weeks, Cori Bush is trailing her challenger by 23 points.
What?
Cori
She's
Bush,
in St. Louis, MO.
St.
right?
Louis.
Well, now why is she behind?
August 6th is the Democrat primary, and why is she behind?
She's not behind a.
That's my
She's
question.
not behind a Republican. There's another Democrat
Yes.
that's going to trounce her. It appears.
But my question is, are Democrats now having second thoughts about the radical left of their party? Because that's what we hear is that
All right,
Joe Biden's the moderate and waiting in the wings.
that's interesting. You should bring that up, Steve.
Is it? I'm
Yes.
glad it is.
Because Allison, my wife, and I were having a conversation about this very thing last night, and she opined, she being my wife, that the Democrats have, quote, overplayed their hand, end of quote. And maybe not necessarily all the Democrats, but those who are controlling the messaging of the party, they've gone too far left, too fast. And because of that, there is a reaction. Now, a lot of America likes left. I mean, this presidential election, I'm just warning you, may still be close. I think Trump's favored and is going to win, but it still may be close because we've basically been a 50-50 country. Even when Trump won in 2016, he didn't win the popular vote. Okay, so I'm just telling you, there are a lot of people in this country, unfortunately, who like left-wing politics, apparently.
Right.
But there seems to be a reaction among a majority of Americans against these left-wing nutty ideas that Biden and company are pushing on us. namely namely doing away with our border and letting millions of people come here. We don't even know who they are, where they're coming from, what we're going to do with them. He's just decimated the border security. We don't even have, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that idea is overwhelmingly rejected by the American people.
Defund the police.
Defund the police idiocy, which not all Democrats subscribe to that, by the way. Biden has condemned that.
Yeah.
You might say, well, he doesn't mean it. Well, I'm just telling you what he's saying publicly. Okay. Also, this push for this gender stuff. Most Americans maybe certainly have a live and let live type view of people's personal lives, but at the same time, they don't want this stuff. They don't want this transgender stuff rammed down their throats and promoted to their children. Even people who would vote Democrat, most of them don't want that kind of stuff.
Or men and women's changing areas, all that kind of
stuff. And putting
like Target
letting boys play girls' sports.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Most Americans, that's unfair. I'm just telling you, these are the kind of things that the Democrats have put first and foremost in their what they've been pushing for. And those things are the American people aren't ready to agree with that yet.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those are just two things that came to mind. How you would define Democrats as overreaching or trying to push too hard, too quickly, and there's a reaction to that.
There's now perhaps a political price to pay.
Yeah. Also, inflation.
That's another thing.
Inflation is just, we all see it and feel it, and it's
a real thing.
The housing market is going crazy with prices going up. You just wonder what's going to happen?
Yeah, burst.
And the price of items that people are seeing. So now I don't think the Democrats said, "Hey, we're for inflation."
Right.
Who's with me?
But they're gonna have to own the policies of the flag bearer of their party, which is Joe Biden right now.
So, by the way, I'd like to point out also that what you're hearing from the Democrat Party and Joe Biden is how good his economic record has been, how many jobs he's created, and how many jobs Donald Trump lost, and how bad his economy was. What he neglects to say is COVID was the reason for all of that.
Right.
Before COVID, Trump had a raging economy, and inflation was minuscule.
Raging in a good way.
Good, yeah, it was
growing,
on fire.
Yeah.
And unemployment was way down. And so when you eliminate half the jobs and you close everything down, your economy's going to take a hit and your unemployment's going to go up. And then when you change presidents in the middle of that stream and then the country starts coming back, I don't know how fair it is to claim that you've created those jobs because now people are hiring back to the old jobs. So just keep that in mind. Just about everything you're hearing from the president when it comes to the politics of this election, take with a grain of sand.
And I'm just going to be honest.
A grain of sand or grain of salt, Steve? I need to know.
You can
I
take
need to know. This is
a grain
important.
of sand.
I've always said a grain is a grain.
Well, you may have a point there.
A
grain is a grain is a
grain of
grain.
salt.
Take it with a grain of gunpowder.
Yes. What I was going to say is that, and we've always said this on the show, Tim, you've said this, presidents get too much credit when things are going well, and they get too much blame when things are going south. But the fact of the matter is people are going to stick the economy with Biden and increasingly the entire Democratic Party. So,
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse. That's
the way it works.
Politics. You want the job.
Right.
You got to deal with that.
Right.
Reality.
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
My thanks to Fred Jackson, Chuck Bond, Ed Vitagliano, and thank you for listening to today's issues. Hey, we got this show. If you didn't get to hear the first part of it, we got it on podcast coming up in just a few minutes. So AFR.net, click on podcast, click on today's issues. See you tomorrow, everybody.